Hello everyone. Now, before I move on to the actual key commentary, I wanted to highlight something that's going to be happening on my stream tomorrow, in pretty much around 12 hours after this vid has been, 24 hours after this vid has been posted. And that is going to be EU versus Asia server clash. That means another server versus server competition. For EU, we'll have UFR, TWA and OMC, aka the OM community representing, which means of course Omni and OM. And on the Asian side we're gonna have OST, VOR and ZA. I don't really know which those clans are. It's pretty interesting. It will be played on the Asian server, so obviously the Asian teams will have a significant ping advantage. But on the other hand, of course, the EU meta and in general competitive scene is a lot more developed, so it should be quite an interesting clash. Now, why should you be interested? Well, I'm gonna put a link down below in the comments where you can predict the outcome of this server clash. Yes, it says EU versus NA. Ignore that. It's wargaming being, well, kind of wargaming. It's supposed to be, it is the EU versus Asia campaign, and you can predict the result. All you need to do is predict, like, they're going to play 9 games, so you can predict this is going to end 9-0 for EU or 9-0 for Asia or anything in between that. And if you make a correct prediction, you have a chance to win a Nelson or a Gallant or 20 exclusive tournament camos. And there's 5 Nelsons for each server, 5 Gallants for each servers, and 200 sets of those 20 camos for each server. So there's a lot of doubloons available here. There's a lot of ships available to be won. This is only for EU and Asian viewers. Sorry about that, the rest of you guys, but this is Wargaming's end, not mine. So even if you're not planning on tuning into the stream and watching the server clash, I do recommend you take part and make your prediction, because, well, you might get a free Nelson or a free Gallant, so highly recommended in that sense. Anyway, enough of the sellout, time to move on to the actual ship itself, the key. The key is an Amagi variation. And I had high hopes for this ship because I thought they could make something really interesting with this, because the idea of a even more brawling focused Amagi, for someone who likes playing aggressive, this was of course always quite interesting. But I feel like they have had some issues deciding on how exactly they want to design the ship. Now, what are the differences between this and the Amagi? Well, first of all, the torpedo belt has gotten completely neutered. The Amagi has an amazing torpedo belt of 45% torpedo reduction. This one has had it reduced to 27. Okay, so a pretty big trade-off in that sense. On the other hand, the AA, the Amagi already had pretty damn good AA, but the Key's AA is competitive with the North Carolinas. So that means it's very, very strong. And that is something that should be kept in mind. The problem though is of course the guns. You might have seen me, I've been shooting and shooting and shooting. It's 5 minutes into this game, I've been trying to shoot at all these targets we see left, right and center, and I cannot for the life of me get a kill. And that is of course reduced Sigma on the Key. It has 1.7 Sigma, and in general it's surprisingly noticeable. I actually like the Amagi guns, but I find the Key guns to be very unreliable, and I think it's strange because it doesn't feel like it should be this big of a difference, but it really, really does show in the game. And the guns just feel highly unreliable, and it's pretty damn frustrating. But it is one of the things that are greatly drawing the ship down for me. Now, the idea, of course, I like the concept of an Amagi that, well, it gives up this dispersion and it gives up some torpedo protection, but in return it has torpedoes, as you can see, and that means maybe it can be this really good brawler. The issue comes down to the fact that the armor design is a bit wonky on the ship. If you get past the turtle, if at long range you get past the turtleback, or it doesn't even have to be that long range. If you get past the turtleback on the Amagi, you still have to get past the Citadel deck armor on the Amagi. And on the Amagi, that is 70 millimeters. So that means even if someone punches through your turtleback, you're still gonna have a pretty damn good chance of bouncing the shell on your Citadel. So that means they'll get a pen, but that's pretty much the end of it. On the Key though, they have reduced this Citadel deck armor from 70 millimeters to 22. And why is this such an important value? Well, pretty much every single battleship you face overmatches 22 millimeters of armor. Overmatch of course means that the shell will penetrate that armor regardless of at what angle it hits it. That's how the mechanic works in this game. And what this means is that if any battleship punches through your turtleback, even just the side armor of it, instead of bouncing, skipping off your citadel deck armor, it automatically becomes a citadel. And this means the ship is extremely vulnerable to broadside citadels, especially at any sort of range. Like, they can come from the weirdest angle. As long as they manage to punch through that broadside armor and what should have been on the Amagi, just the shells skipping off the deck, citadel deck armor becomes citadels. So the trade-off you have to give for this AA and for the torpedoes is ultimately, in my opinion, a bit too much, because it's very hard to really get to enjoy this ship. Like the idea of a IGN Amagi, like a brawling focused Amagi, or even more brawling focused Amagi, I love that idea. But I think they went a bit overboard with making the Citadel as vulnerable as it is. This Chapaev decided, I'm actually helping the Chapaev here, because I'm trying to make him angle towards the enemy so he doesn't get killed. Anyway, the problem here is ultimately you kind of want to get in and brawl with this ship, but on the other hand it's really hard to get in and brawl because of your squishiness. What you ultimately end up doing a lot, I think, and what's probably the best way to really play this ship is going to be speccing it full AA and kind of playing it like an IGN North Carolina instead of like an IGN Tirpitz. And it kind of makes the torpedoes quite useless. In fact, the most use I've had of the torpedoes on this ship is estimating the speed of my targets. That's really the most I've used for it, not actual brawling. Especially considering you're tier 8, you end up against tier 10s a lot. It's really hard. This game I think I'm against tier 9s, so that's a nice exception. The guns do hit hard if you get close enough to use them, but at any sort of range, they really fall off. So the ship has this weird contradiction where you want to get in and brawl, but on the other hand, closing the distance and actually being able to brawl is so hard because of how much damage you'll take on the way. There's also, of course, the reduced torpedo belt, which means that pushing into these brawls, which means, of course, pushing into DDs and cruisers and all these various forms of torpedoes, is even harder because of the squishier torpedo belt. I absolutely agree that some trade-offs needed to be made in order to make to not make the ship overpowered. Like, if you're gonna give it great AA, you have to tune down something else. If you're gonna give it torpedoes, you have to tune down something else. But I think they kind of went in the wrong direction, because they tuned down two things I consider extremely important on battleships. One is general tankiness. Citadels are a huge problem for any battleship because you can only heal 10% of the incoming damage. So that's already lowering the Citadel deck armor at that point is already a massive downside. But then they also lowered the torpedo belt. Okay, I'm okay with this. I'm pretty good at dodging torpedoes. I'm okay with this. But the sigma on the guns as well. So it kind of feels like you end up playing this ship that is a neutered Amagi. In fact, most of the time I'd rather brawl in an Amagi, and at long range I most certainly would rather play an Amagi because of the gun performance. Dropping some preemptive torps as I turn around, because there's a lot of ships behind there. They got Donskois that's pushing up, they got a Mogami that's pushing up, they got all sorts of stuff. And there you get an example, of course, of the gun performance. You saw that volley, not a single hit on that Kagero. And I think I've heard some other guys say also that the close range dispersion is kind of all over the place. Might just be me being unfortunate, but it has felt very inconsistent. Bismarck pushes in. My torps do look pretty good on the Donskoy though. And I do actually land one torp on the Donskoy. But look at that dispersion! Like, holy crap! Like, it feels so much. That was 4 shells at 3 km that all missed when I shot my front guns. And that kind of dispersion, it just feels absurd to me. Like, I feel they've gone too far on it. They couldn't really decide how they wanted to balance it, so they kind of like tuned down everything on one side and then tuned up everything up on the other side. It's made it this strange contradiction. Flooded the key and got him killed, and I mean, these kind of situations, I love brawling. I think brawling is fun, and getting into these kind of situations is exactly what I love. And I would love for the ship to be more receptive and encouraging towards this kind of gameplay, because I would love to be able to do this kind of stuff more often. The idea of a fun, brawling focused Amagi is, in my opinion, hilarious, and I would absolutely love to play it more. But it seems so very hard to consistently pull it off. I do kill the Bismarck, but of course the Kagero Torps finally catch me. My hopeful Torps to the right are unable to kill him. Not that it really matters, since this game was kinda over, and it ends up with a 145k damage game and a defeat. The credits are very nice though, especially if you got the premium camo. This thing makes a lot of credits, but that's pretty much it. Team score wise, well, team kinda did collapse, and honestly I just had kind of fun at the end with the brawl, because well, game was lost anyway, so who cares. Might as well show off the brawling capacity of this ship. Detailed report, 2 million potential, tanked about 88k, damage dealt, guns 54 hits, 120, not really that good of an average damage. Secondaries, they did not really much. HE 77 hits, 281 damage. That is very, very sad. One fire, one flooding, not really that special. So the ship is, it's not really a ship that I can recommend. I had hopes for it. When it was in its previous version, I actually almost felt it felt better, even though the guns felt very sluggish and so forth, because in this current version it feels like a contradiction. You have no torpedo belt and you have a very vulnerable citadel, but you also have torpedoes and bad dispersion. So torpedoes and bad dispersion encourages brawling, but squishy citadel and no torpedo belt discourages brawling. So it's I can't really decide exactly what they wanted with this ship. It is a good moneymaker. It is a very good XP grinder as well if you get the special camo. But as a ship, I enjoy playing the Turpits more if I want to brawl, and I enjoy playing the Amagi more if I want to roam. So I can't really say that this ship really hits that niche that would make it appeal to me. Not necessarily a bad ship, but not really that special of a ship. It's kind of suffering from an identity crisis. I think the ship might be very, very strong if you spec it full AA and queue up with a carrier body though. I think it will be very strong, like you queue up with one of your friends has gotten a Graf Spee or Enterprise, or he's just leveling Chicago Lexington, whatever. You queue up with them and you go full AA spec. I'm pretty sure the ship will be amazing, but what you're doing then is not really anything different than what a North Carolina could do, which kind of makes it. And on the flip side, if you want to shoot down planes and kind of support from range, the NC is much better at it thanks to the better gun accuracy. So yeah, this ship not really that worth that much in my book. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this brief commentary. Let me move on to my recommended build. Right, as usual, I will start with the modules. Not really much to talk about since it is a premium ship. Consumable wise, I recommend damage control premium and of course heal premium. You are playing a key, which is a great money maker, so you should have no issues affording this. And of course spotting aircraft to be able to shoot in the smokes and actually to extend your range, because the 19.4 km range is pretty damn limiting when you end up against tier 10s. Also, of course, you don't really need the fighter plane because your AA is so good that anyone attempting to strike you will, well, people in general, carriers will avoid striking keys because they are starting to learn just how strong your anti-air is. Upgrade wise, main armaments mod 1. AA guns range. I mean, if you never ever see carriers, then aiming system mod 1 is okay. But in general, because of just how much of a strength this AA range is, and just because of how unreliable I found the guns, I do think that the AA guns mod is fundamentally better. That's not to say that necessarily running aiming system mod 1 is in any way bad. Because it benefits plenty of things that you could use, like dispersion, secondary range, turret traverse on torps. But ultimately, I would still recommend the AA guns. Tankiness 1 and 2. The rudder shift is actually pretty okay. I mean, it's not the best at 15.9, but I mean, compared to Amagi, this is without rudder shift, so it is still superior. And 870 meter turning circle versus key is 880, so they handle very similarly. The speed is of course nice, 31 knots. I'm pretty sure that is with a flag though. Yeah, that is with a flag included. Now, captain perks wise, I am currently running my Yamato captain build, which of course involves priority target, faster turret traverse, additional heal, stealth, and fire prevention to deal with all the HE spam that you're facing, especially now with Royal Navy. And then you add in adrenaline rush and vigilance. But I wouldn't say this is necessarily the most optimal key build. I mean, this is a great battleship build, but if you really want to get the utmost out of the ship, I would recommend going for some sort of AA build instead, and queuing up with a carrier, of course, to ensure that you get a carrier to shoot down planes for. But in general, if you want to get the utmost out of the key, I would recommend probably getting at least AFT. You might have to give up fire prevention or concealment to get it. Your concealment is already pretty crap, so giving up concealment might be okay. Fire prevention is a bit risky with Royal Navy around, but the additional AFT range would buff it to your AA range on the long range to a nice 7.2. And at 7.2 range, you actually shoot down planes better than in North Carolina. So that gives you some idea of just how strong the long range anti-air aura on this ship is. The mid range is of course quite good, not quite up to NC's 240-ish. And the short range is 114. That's okay. What's actually NC's short range? NC's short range is 158. So it does win on mid and short range, but on the long range aura, the key is the king with that insane 183. Full AA build is of course going to be absolutely ridiculous on the ship. If you go BFT, AFT, and manual AA doubling the damage on this long range aura, and then making it 7.2, it's gonna absolutely melt every plane in the vicinity, and it's gonna be disgusting. If you guys want, I could make an AA test of that, because I reckon it will be very, very powerful. Anyway, flag wise, I mean, you might as well run XP or credits camos, credits flag. Sorry, I'm a bit woozy. I kind of just woke up. Because, well, this has the unique camo if you bought the special camo. The normal camo is like every other tier 8 premium, but if you got the special camo that you got from whatever package it was, I was gifted this, you got an insane moneymaker on your hands, since this gives 50% credits and 100% XP, also minus 50% to the cost. So this kind of turns the ship into a Missouri when it comes to making money. Not quite, but very, very close. So in that sense, you want to maximize either the XP gains by just putting a ton of XP flags on everywhere, or you maximize the credit gains with the Wyvern and the Zulu and so forth. I think I'm grinding the Yamamoto mission. That's why I have so many flags that give straight up XP, since one of the missions involves just earning a lot of XP. Anyway though, that was my key commentary, and I can't say I'm too big of a fan of this ship. I mean, full AA build is probably going to be very trolly and very, very hilarious, but ultimately the fundamental issue comes really down to that it doesn't have the tankiness of the Amagi, but it also doesn't have the broadside punishment that the Amagi can give out thanks to the improved Sigma. So you take more damage, you don't really deal more damage, you have your kind of niche AA that relies on carriers, and you have your torps, but the problem is the torps are located all the way back here at the very far stern, and when it comes to brawling, Tirpitz's torp position is just so much better. Being able to launch the torps right out from the broadside, like right up here, is so much stronger than having to wait for your torps to travel all the way from the back to the ship to the front, and it really shows in those brawling situations. And of course, the fact that the turtleback, if a plunging shell punches through the turtleback, punches through this side armor turtleback here, and manages to land on the inside of the ship. Well, this entire middle part is 22 millimeter. This citadel deck is 22 millimeters, which means pretty much every battleship, well, it means every battleship you face is capable of overmatching it. So what that means is that it doesn't matter at what angle the shell lands when it hits this citadel deck, because of the way the game mechanics works, it will automatically overmatch it, and it will be a guaranteed citadel. And this, of course, is a huge weakness, especially when we compare to the Amagi's citadel deck, and we realize it's 70 millimeters. So on the Amagi, if you get punched through the turtleback, you still have a pretty damn good chance of bouncing the shell because of how strong the angled 70 millimeter armor is, but no such thing exists on the key. So ultimately, I feel like they nerfed it too hard, in a fear of making it overpowered. They took down the torpedo protection was nerfed from 45 to 27. The Sigma was nerfed, and then we have the Sigma, and then we have the turtleback as well. And I think that's too much at once. I think they could have kept the old Amagi armor model, but they could have nerfed the Sigma, and they could have nerfed the torpedo protection. And I think that would have been a pretty damn balanced ship, because you're kind of afraid to push in close enough to brawl with this ship because of the squishiness, and that kind of counteracts the whole purpose of having this AA fortress and these torpedoes when you're afraid to go in and actually use them. So I think there's some contradicting design going into the way they balance the key. So I'm not really that big of a fan of this ship. I've tried to make it work, but really the inconsistent guns and the fear you have in pushing in anywhere, it makes it pretty exhausting to try to play and have too much fun in. Anyway, that was my key commentary. I hope you guys enjoyed it.